Today in the Locked On Sabres podcast, we ask AI to predict the past, the present, and the future for the Buffalo Sabres. That's coming up here on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. And thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can check us out on our YouTube channel. Hit the like and subscribe button. You could be a part of our Locked On Sabres text club as well by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Tuesday. We usually don't record episodes on Tuesday in the summer, but I'm going to be in Rochester for Bills camp over the next 3 days. So getting an episode in here now because I'm going to be away for the next couple of days. And today on the show, we're going to have some fun with all the AI stuff going on the internet today. Let's take that to the Buffalo Sabres. We are going to have ChatGPT predict some questions about the Sabres in the past and also the upcoming season. So we'll have a little bit of fun with that, a little bit of a mailbag edition of the show later on as well. So a lot to get to on today's show. If you would, again, like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. At Locked On Sabres, check us out on Twitter, or, of course, you can always hit us up on Blue Sky. I'm there at Sneaky Joe Sports. So last episode, you want to check it out. The last couple episodes, really, we went through breakout candidates for the Buffalo Sabres on our last show. 2 episodes ago, last show, Tage Thompson and his MVP candidacy for this year. And I got some feedback on that kind of the same as what I was saying. It's such a long shot, but it's not impossible that Tage could have that type of year. And I do feel like he's more likely than Dahlin. So you want to check all of that out in full. Hit us up on our feed. Go back one episode, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Odyssey app, wherever you may be listening. So today we're in the summer. Have some fun. Look through some nostalgia. And with all this new ChatGPT stuff, it's not even really that new anymore. And many of you are, going to be able to do this on your own, and maybe you even have done this on your own. But for those that don't, it's pretty simple. You just plug it in a question to ChatGPT and you let it run wild. So had a couple of things that I went through today to kind of bring this to you. So some nostalgia. Briere and Drury was one place I wanted to start. The tank. What's going to happen this season? A lot to get to in this little exercise. And I've got my own takes on what would have happened as well. Just kind of, the biggest questions. And I worked with the text club a little bit on this, on what are the biggest questions that you would want to go back, the biggest what ifs for the Buffalo Sabres. And, you could go find things in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, but me only being 30 years old, I'm going to pretty much keep this past 2000. And where do I start for that? Well, it's obviously July 1st of 2007, which is, in my Sabres lifetime, still the darkest singular day that I've had as a Buffalo Sabres fan, watching 2 of my childhood favorites, idols, especially Briere, he and Drury, to leave on the same day within minutes of each other. Maybe it was hours. It felt like minutes. Was obviously gut-wrenching. And it did pretty much kill any chance of winning a Stanley Cup. Thereafter, they were able to make the playoffs a couple of times, but they certainly were not in contention. So that's where I wanted to start. Predict what would have happened if Danny Briere and Chris Drury had stayed with the Buffalo Sabres past 2007. That's given the Sabres a lot, right? Back in that day, it seemed as though they were really only committed to signing one of the two, and it surprised them to get neither, but that they would have been okay only getting one of the two. And I think as the story goes, they were more invested in Drury being the one that came back, and that obviously did not happen. So I asked ChatGPT, what would have happened if Briere and Drury stayed with the Sabres past 2007? And obviously, again, what happened? Sabres missed the playoffs a bunch of times thereafter. The Sabres, according to ChatGPT, make the playoffs in the next couple of seasons, likely a top 4 seed. Their offense remains elite with Briere, Drury, Vanek, Roy, Pominville, and Stafford. Ryan Miller continues to progress. Possible second round or conference final appearance, perhaps facing the Penguins early. That's the 07-08 season. 2008-2010. What's kind of interesting here is ChatGPT is more confident that the Sabres would have been capable of winning a Stanley Cup 2009, 2008, 2009, 2010. More in that very next year. Give Ryan Miller a couple of years to cook and get to being one of the league's top goaltenders with Briere and Drury still there, Vanek reaching his prime, Pominville reaching his prime, and maybe that 2010 year would have been the best year for it all coming together, because you probably still would have had a very good Briere. Drury kind of fell off a little bit by that point, and then those other guys were really hitting their stride. Could they have won a cup? ChatGPT says yes, but not guaranteed, not because of anything the Sabres had. Pittsburgh, Boston, Washington were all showing up at that time. Most realistic shot they have is 2009, right before Boston hits full stride. That's right around Miller's 2010 Vezina season. And with Drury and Briere on the roster, that would have given them their best chance to win the Stanley Cup. Anything disagreeable there? I think for the most part, that's on point. Now, I threw another question at it. Here's one thought experiment that I have not ever had about the Sabres from 2006 that ChatGPT brought up. I asked another follow-up. What happens if the Sabres defensemen don't all get hurt in the 2006 Stanley Cup playoffs? They lost, obviously, Teppo Numminen, Dmitry Kalinin, Henrik Telinder, Jay McKee, of course, in Game 7. And that if they had all those players, you don't have to have Nathan Pace, you don't have to have Doug Janik, you don't have to have Jeff Gilson, Roy Fitzpatrick. And ChatGPT predicts the Sabres would have won that series in 6. They would have beat the Carolina if they had stayed healthy on the blue line. I'm not even getting Tim Connolly back. Just the blue line. They beat Carolina in 6. And then they go to the finals against the 8-seeded Edmonton Oilers, who, ChatGPT, their roster was solid, but Buffalo had more speed, more skill, and more depth, particularly up front. Sabres' aggressive 4-line system likely would overwhelm all of the Oilers' defensemen minus Chris Pronger. Sabres win the Cup in 5 or 6 games. They were arguably the best team with Ottawa in that entire playoff, and that they would have beaten Edmonton in 5 or 6 games. Now, it's like, all right, yep, of course, we all think that, right? Like, we're not disagreeing with that at all. But here's the one thing that it brought up. It kind of went further than 06. I wasn't expecting that. Like, I'm just asking if they're going to win the Cup. Ripple effects it goes into. Free agency in 2007. First Cup in franchise history means Danny Briere and Chris Drury become legends and stay long-term. Ownership motivated to retain the core that won the Stanley Cup. That's a thought experiment I had never considered. The Buffalo Sabres defensive injuries in that 06 series against Carolina. Often, I will say and believe that those injuries cost the Buffalo Sabres the Stanley Cup in 2006. Did it also, with that, cost them 4 or 5 more goes at it? Because that's probably right. I don't want to assume that it's right, because Tom Golisano wanted to break even, and you are assuming he would have acted differently with a cup in his back pocket, which I kind of want to say yes, that he would have. That there's no way that it would have been allowed. He would have allowed it. I think Larry Quinn maybe is a better person to point to here, that they would have allowed those two to leave after winning the cup, legends of the team that had won it. And Drury maybe would have been more motivated to stay, and Briere would have been everyone would have been more motivated to stay. How often do you see a cup team like that have its nucleus broken up that quickly after? It probably doesn't happen. They probably get extensions right after winning the Stanley Cup, I think. So those injuries might not just have cost you a cup in 06, because I believe that it did. But the ripple effect of that is those two stay. And you have a long stretch of contention. And that's what you cost yourself. And that you might have actually lost out on multiple Stanley Cups by those injuries happening. Again, it's their own fault. It's not to absolve them of losing Briere and Drury back then. But that's probably right. And I never thought of it that way, that those injuries really cost them more than just the Stanley Cup, as if that, sounds like it can make any sense at all. So there's that first question there. Anything else in that I really wanted? Could have sparked a short dynasty window from 2006 to 2009, depending on retention of those players. I wouldn't go that far. Dynasty to me is 3 Stanley Cups, and maybe they get to 2. I doubt they would have got to 3. I mean, there were other great teams. Crosby was arriving and Ovechkin was arriving. And again, like, part of this is Drury did collapse as a player after leaving the Buffalo Sabres. Briere went on to have a great career in Philadelphia and was a clutch player in the playoffs. Drury went to the New York Rangers, and after having a 37-goal, 69-point season with the Buffalo Sabres, he never reached 60 goals again, and he never topped 25 goals. And by 2009, 2010, he's a 14-goal, 32-point player. He plays one more year, and that is it. He had health issues, and that was a part of it. But there's not a long period of sustained success by Drury in those years. There is by Briere, but that still would have been obviously critical to them maintaining as a cup contender. When we come back, 2 more ChatGPT questions that I wanted to run through. What would have happened had the Sabres not tanked in 2015? And what's going to happen this year, 25-26? That's coming up here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are all about baseball under the lights or golf on the green or high-stakes soccer action, you got the Premier League starting in a couple weeks. I cannot wait. FanDuel is the best way to make every great game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so now why not throw a little money to make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are, they are playing the video games in some of these hot days with all the smoke and you don't want to go outside. I've been using FanDuel to track all these soccer games. I've been looking at Toronto on the baseball side of things as well. That's been a lot of fun. Big runs, a lot of overs on the totals. New daily promotions every day on FanDuel. The app is fresh. It's easy to use, fast to pay out. Makes every regular season game even more of a must-watch event. So whether it's the same game parlay or you're letting a bet ride in the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Worked with some of our texters in our Locked On Sabres text club, and we're throwing some questions at ChatGPT of the Buffalo Sabres, and they're spitting them back. Couple of responses on those Briere Drury predictions. One texter, it's very hard to see them not winning a cup. Looking up teams that lost championships because of injuries, and the 06 Sabres were right on top of that. Obviously, that is very true. Anyways, let's get to a couple more questions that I spit into there or threw into there. One of which is the tank. I have a strong opinion on what would have happened. I have a strong opinion that the Sabres should have tanked in 2015. They did, and it worked to get Jack Eichel, but the team never got good, and the team never became a Stanley Cup level team, which is what the whole thing was about. So had they not tanked, ChatGPT says Buffalo tries to compete or at least play honestly. They aren't a playoff team, but they finished mid to bottom 25th through 27th in the 2014-15 season. They lose out on McDavid and Eichel, but they likely get either Dylan Strome, Mitch Marner, maybe Matthew Barzal. Marner is the guy that it mentions the most, but no franchise center. So very different rebuild path. So no Eichel means no face of the franchise. Maybe the rebuild is slower, but more organically without one savior figure. They might, and this is maybe the most interesting part of this. It says they might keep some veterans longer. Ryan O'Reilly trade could have been different. And that is probably right. And I don't believe all the smoke from back then. It wasn't even really smoke. It was rumor that Eichel and O'Reilly didn't get along. I mean, I'm not saying they were best of friends, but I don't really think it was not even close to the reason that O'Reilly got traded out of there. Now, just because that's not true doesn't mean that the trade could have gone down differently. If Eichel's not here and they don't have a franchise centerman riding right behind Ryan O'Reilly, they're not trading Ryan O'Reilly. I don't think. He was a number one center on a team that already had a number one center right behind him. So he was seen then as expendable because you've got Eichel that's going to play 20 plus minutes a night at number one center. If you don't have that guy, you can't afford to get rid of Ryan O'Reilly. So Ryan O'Reilly probably stays. And listen, I was supportive of the tank, and I think that it worked to get Jack Eichel. And I think that the reasons they were bad after had nothing to do with the tank. It was about poor management. That doesn't mean they couldn't have been successful without tanking. Because if you go O'Reilly and Marner at the top of your lineup, and O'Reilly stays long-term, that could work. You still have to build around him with a blue line, though. And that was really the biggest problem of those teams, was the blue line. That never got corrected. So they still would have had to done that. They would have had to do that. So that was one about that I thought was pretty interesting. Same thing though, like the final prediction of what would have happened is that it would have been a more balanced rebuild, but a slower rebuild. They would have avoided front office turmoil, cultural instability, potentially better long-term cohesion, but still not ever developing into a contender. And like that to me doesn't sound that much better. Personally. So it's still telling you like it might have been smoother, but they never would have gotten really, really good if they hadn't done that. So I guess that kind of tells you that there was nothing that could have happened, maybe, that would have had them be successful, because you just can't hire those GMs and coaches and expect, to get good results, I think. I did also put in there, nothing really that interesting about this one. What would have happened if the Sabres had let Jack Eichel get his neck surgery in 2021? And there's a much better chance that he would have stayed. Sabres stay committed to Eichel. He is more open to coming back. They rebuild around him. Dahlin, Power, Thompson, Cousins, and Quinn all develop under Eichel at the top of the lineup, as they would be playing in smaller roles. Eichel leads a formidable core that's still, he's still under 30 by the time they all hit their prime. So basically it's kind of saying that, like, okay, Eichel would have been more willing to come back if you let him get his surgery, and if you had refused to trade him, and his happiness would have improved as that young core started to show what they were capable of, which they did in the next couple of years. So that would be with Don Granato. I believe that too. I really do believe if the Sabres had told Eichel, no, we're not trading you. He wanted to trade if they were going to rebuild. No, we're going to keep you anyway. Here you go. You can get your artificial disc replacement. They let him do that. It's not nearly as ugly. He comes back in eventually, and Don Granato would have held that together. That he would have had that relationship just good enough to maintain it while the other guys are getting good. And that when they all got good, Eichel would have still been on the team, and they would have been a playoff team, and then everybody would have been happy. That's kind of what I think was possible if they had just let him get the surgery. Obviously, there's no way of knowing. Last thing, what will happen this year? 25-26. What is going to happen this season? I answered this question on Locked On NHL Game Night last week. How many points will the Sabres have? Not only was I lower than what ChatGPT predicts for the Sabres this year, I was significantly lower than what they predict. So one positive prediction coming from some AI here and on the Buffalo Sabres, coming up here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres presented by Monarch Money. If you ever wish that managing your money felt easier, well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you are growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO. Gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You track all your accounts, your investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you are also building wealth. All of that in one place. It makes it a lot easier with your partner if you're going out to eat a lot or you're shopping a lot, and you kind of have that all under control because you can at least, keep track of it. It can build. It can add up really, really fast. Take a look at your spending in that way. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, just playing around with ChatGPT today and the Buffalo Sabres. And the final question that I put in there: how many points will the Buffalo Sabres have in 2025-26? When I answered this question last week on Locked On NHL Game Night, my answer was 75 to 80 points. That was, to me, the most likely outcome. It's possible they could be below that and be the worst team in the league. I do think that's possible. It's also possible they have a lucky goalie year. They get improved on the power play, and they're better defensively, and they get 95 points. I thought that was possible, but my sweet spot was 75 to 80. That's what I think is most likely this season. Not fun, right? Not fun at all. That'd be horrible. It would be horrendous. The team maybe gets blown up after that if that's the type of season they have. So obviously rooting against that. Threw it into ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT say about this season? And it starts going through it. Thompson, Dahlin, point totals, Tuck being a major contributor. It says Josh Norris and Jack Quinn offset the loss of JJ Peterka. Norris, it has at 51 points, which to me isn't that great an offset. Jack Quinn at 48 points. That's actually pretty good, I think, for Jack Quinn this year. Newcomers, Michael Kesselring, Josh Doan, Connor Timmins will help with depth and experience and being tougher to play against. Despite offensive depth issues, the Sabres get better defensively and get better goaltending to push upward. And that's interesting. Getting better goaltending. That's not assumed by me, but possible. Certainly possible. Final prediction. Projected point total for the Buffalo Sabres. Most likely outcome, 88 to 92 points. Way higher. 10 to 15 points higher than what I said. 88 to 92 points. 88 would be, according to this, a marginal improvement over last year, but still short of the playoff pace. 90 to 92, a realistic push. If internal scoring picks up and defensive goaltending improves, that can get them to make it. 95 plus points would require major key breakouts and a few setbacks. And that's beyond what it projects anyway. 88 to 92 points. But that is giving them a lot of credit for, the defense and the goaltending is going to get better. It takes a step forward. Atlantic Division coming down a little bit. Boston really is important to that, is a part of this as well. That is a higher total than I thought. Now, I think that's also a higher total than what the current vibes are from the fan base. I think a 92-point season, I think right now fans would sign on the dotted line for a 92-point season. And that would be knowing you're probably not making the playoffs. It's possible. You could if I told you right now you can have a 92-point season, and that's a 30% chance of making the playoffs today, you might take that because I'm going to have a fun season. There's progress. I'm close again, and I'm still giving myself a chance. Not a great chance, but a chance of getting in. I think fans would take that. I think, unless you really want Kevin Adams fired, which I've heard that from some fans as well. So, good. A nice positive projection on the Buffalo Sabres. I'll remember that for any other projections we start getting in the next month about the Sabres season. Is that, hey, remember, AI had him at 92 points, 88 to 92, but who's counting? All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. I'm at Bill's training camp for the next couple of days, so I'll be away, but I'll be checking the text club. You got a question you want to hit me up with, feel free to throw it in there. If you want to sign up, you can do that as well. And we'll either be back on Friday or we'll talk on Monday. So either Friday or Monday. Got to see how my schedule works with camp, which has been a little bit back and forth lately. But we'll keep you updated on Twitter and on the text club for when that's going to be. as we roll closer to the season. And maybe we get some news between now and then. That'd be great. That'll do for us. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL for all your hockey talk throughout the offseason. They're available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.